Hi everybody. Today we're going to make a new house for our pet worms. There they are. Come on, let's do it. I put that pile of worms back into a container. I've collected a lot of worms from our worm farm. That's this purple box right here. There are no more worms in there now. They're either in this container or they're under those piles of dirt you see down in front of me. I put the piles into a nice tall stack. You know, worms are very sensitive to the light. So when they get in a tall stack like that, they want to crawl all the way down to the bottom where it's very dark. When they crawl down to the bottom where it's very dark, I pick up what's on the top of them and I put it into this box. Oh, it's heavy. I don't know if you can see that. This is what's left over after the worms eat all the dirt and newspaper and ground up apples and orange peels and leftover vegetables. This is what's left. When the food goes through their bodies, it comes out their back ends and it's called worm castings. Worm castings are very, very, very good for plants in the garden. They have lots of vitamins in them for the plants. You know, worms are also very good for the garden. They dig and move and eat and move through the roots of the plants and make the soil nice and airy and soft so the roots can grow deep. I've already collected a lot of worm castings from our worm farm that we had here. The worms used up all the dirt they had in there. And I put it on this place in those piles, and I'm collecting it so we can use it to plant some plants in the children's school garden. Now we're going to make a new house for the worms. To make a new house for the worms, we need soil. I put a lot of soil in here. Let's see if I can bend it down. It's also very heavy so you can see it. There's soil in there. And we need water. So what happens when we put water into soil? Yeah, it makes mud. That's a lot of fun. Putting lots of water in. There we go. We're going to put something else into our soil. I'm going to mix it up to make it very muddy. There we go. The soil needs to be nice and damp for the worms. They like it wet and dark. Now, to give the worms something to eat, we can use cut up newspaper. There it is, right there. I cut up some old newspaper and I'm going to mix it in with our soil and water. That'll give the worms something to eat. Wait, worms can eat paper? Of course they can. Worms eat anything organic, once living or living. And paper comes from, you got it, from trees. So that's a once living thing. We can put some paper in with our soil. That helps make it a nice bed for the worms. And we'll put some more water on top of that. There we go. Pour it on. Need a lot of water and a lot of paper. And we're going to mix it up again. I've got a big spoon, mixing it. Now we've got a muddy mix of newspaper, soil, and water. That'll make a really good new bed for the worms. All right, it's looking like we need a little bit more water, and we're going to break up this paper a little bit because we don't want giant clumps. And as the worms move through this soil and paper, they will move and eat and dig and eat and move. And again, when that food goes through their bodies, the newspaper and the dirt, because worms eat dirt, right? it comes out their back ends and makes wonderful worm castings that we can use in our garden. All right, I've got a good muddy mix in here. I'm going to turn it so you can see it. Tap off my spoon. There we go. It's a good muddy mix of newspaper, soil, and water. Now, I'm going to take the worms that I took out of the box before I put new soil in there and show them to you once again. Here they are. That's just a few. They like to be together when they aren't in the dirt. But there are lots more than that. And we're going to put them right into our mix of soil, newspaper, and water. Just going to pour that over there. Oh, one little worm left. Get down there. And I'm going to let those worms dig down in there a little bit. While I'm doing that, I can show you my little piles of dirt here in front of me. The worms have dug way down to the bottom. So I'm going to pick up just the top of that pile, like this. Oh, no worms in there, just wonderful worm castings that we can use for food for our plants in the garden. And I'm going to put it into that box that I showed you before, right over here beside me. There it is. Now, if you go to the store and want to buy worm castings like this much, it's very expensive. But it's not expensive to make the worm castings with our worms. I'm going to take one more top pile off. No worms in there, just beautiful worm castings that we can use for food for our garden. Put it in our box. Now I'm going to make my towers a little bit tall again, in case there are any worms that are near the top, and they're going to go down to the bottom. Shall we look to see if any went all the way down? Let's try. I'm going to turn over my pile here. Oh, they're not down there yet. That's okay. It takes a long time. We're out in the sun because, remember, worms don't like the light. Their bodies are very sensitive to that. Let's try another pile and see if the worms went down in that one. Just going to dig down a little bit. Oh, here are some. Yep, they went down to the bottom where there was no light. There they are. I'm going to put them into their new home. All right, it looks like the worms have dug down into their new space. Now, usually I wait a little bit to do this, but I wanted to show you the whole process. I have a tiny little machine here that makes food very small, chops it up into little pieces. And I put some apples in here earlier because I had some rotten ones. You can see they're very brown. And I chopped them up. I have another one here. This one has some brown spots too. That's what it looked like before I chopped it up. Now, it looks like that. Do you want to hear my machine? It's pretty loud. If you don't like loud, you can put your hands over your ears. You ready? Yeah, that's a loud machine. But it works really well to chop up our apples. Now, when we want to give the worms some extra food to eat, they definitely have their dirt and newspaper. We can dig a hole in our worm bin, in our new home for the worms, usually in the corner. So I'm going to dig a hole in the corner, in a space where I didn't put those worms. And I'm going to take my apples that I chopped up, and I'm going to put them right in there. There they go. Yeah. That will make really good food for the worms. There. I put my my apples in there. And now, guess what I have to do? I have to cover them up because you know what? If I don't, this new home for the worms will stink really badly. And I keep it inside my house, so I don't want it to stink. I'm going to cover up those apples. Push the dirt over. Let me see if I can show you. See the apples in the corner right there? I'm going to push the dirt over so I can't see them anymore. There we go. Now I can't see the apples anymore. And my worms will really enjoy those. Now remember that worms are sensitive to the light. They don't like it. So I'm going to put a nice dark cover on top of that new house so that they're comfortable. Here it is. There's a sign on the front. It says, "We recycle." Worms are recyclers. Yeah, they are. They eat things that we don't need, like rotten leaves and dirt and apple cores and maybe even a crust of bread. And we can put it in our worm farm for the worms. They eat it, and again, when it comes out their back ends, they make castings that we can use for vitamins for our garden plants. That's recycling. Reusing something, reusing it again. I'm going to put their nice cover on there. And I'll take this back inside because the worms also don't like to be too hot. They like to be nice and cool and damp. So I'll need to put them in the shade inside my house. Thanks for playing with me today and helping me to make a new home for our worms. If you'd like to make a home for worms, all you need is soil, water, some cut up newspaper, and a few worms. Give it a try. See you next time, friends.